Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wellness Wednesday Inspiration. My name is Fernanda Torres, and I'm here with Dr. Linda Marquez. And today's topic, it's all about feeling tired, feeling fatigued, because it happens to a lot of us, and many of us do not know necessarily if we're feeling tired because we are doing too much, because we're not resting enough, or is there anything clinically or physically or emotionally going on with me. So that's today's topic. Dr. Linda Marquez, how are you doing today?
Good. Happy Wednesday. I'm doing amazing. And like always, our favorite day of the week. But we have some good news. Like now we're both on the same time zone. So I'm
Yay.
excited you're officially an Arizonian now. So that's awesome.
I am. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be in
Yeah.
Arizona and officially be an Arizonian.
And you also came in at the time of a heat wave, I think. Well, I don't know. It's always a heat wave during this time. But
Right.
it's you get used to it. It's just a few months, and every single state has something going on, whether it's too hot, too cold, too many people, whatever.
Mhm.
And you just make the best of it. But
Mhm.
I love Arizona now. That I would never leave California, but I'm so glad I did.
Yes. Well, I woke up this morning and I early 5 o'clock. It was dark out, and I went. I literally drove. I don't have my bike, otherwise I probably would have just biked. It's in the moving truck, which is not here yet because I'm
Mhm.
moving. And I drove. It was like an 8-minute drive to this mountain, and I hiked up the mountain, and I had such an amazing view. If you guys are friends with me on Facebook and you go to my story, you will see pictures of kind of like the a little bit of my morning, I guess. And it was so amazing to be able to do that. It was a mountain 8 minutes away from where I'm staying. It's such an amazing thing to have, like connecting with nature and things that are not necessarily perhaps as available over there.
That's
So it was a nice experience.
Yeah. How were you feeling in the morning? How did you feel? Pretty good getting up because you're adjusting to that time change? Your energy been good, or just what's going on with that? Since we're talking about low energy.
Right, right. No, actually, I am ahead. So when I woke up at 5 o'clock, my body's at 7 o'clock, right? So I'm already like, oh my God, I'm going, I'm late because I usually wake up at like 6 o'clock my time. So that would be 4 o'clock here. And I
Mhm.
woke up at 5. So I think my body knew the morning before or the night before, I did wake up like at 4:30, which was my time before. So, the body knows kind of what you're doing, and it's like, hey, it's time to wake up, time to go and get going, basically. And it's good. I'm feeling great. I'm
Yeah.
so happy. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I think it's kind of the accumulation of a lot of the information that we've shared with the audience in our previous podcast about, taking care of the body, but also with the mindset. So that's really of just putting out the intention, seeing it happen, and we've had guests that have talked about that. Of course, Kimberly Rinaldi talked about that, Ian Hart talked about, and then some of our future guests that we have lined up, they're very much in line with a lot of, what we talk about health being the mind, the body, and the spirit, and how you can't separate them. So I'm excited about, as we dig into the low energy, it's just the low energy is just, they're just symptoms. That's not the cause. So it's always like going back to, well, why do I have low energy? So that's what we're going to talk about today. So, just letting people know low energy, if you go and see a doctor for low energy, they're not going to know what to do with you. So we're going to try to like direct you within a few, um, kind of what we see, but also let's deal with the low hanging fruit, so to speak. Do what you can before you go see the doctor and see if some of these strategies first help.
It's funny that you mentioned that they're not gonna know what to do with you, because that's kind of a joke between us. If a patient walks in and it's like, "Oh, I'm feeling tired," we're like, "Oh, great," like so many things can be going on. So many things. It's like, okay, now try to guess.
Yes.
So hopefully the video today, the podcast, is going to give anybody listening some guidelines and some idea if there is in fact something going on. Again, mentally, physically, emotionally, everything counts.
Mhm.
Okay, so some of the causes that we're going to be talking about are hypothyroid, which is the thyroid, the gland, and the hypothyroidism, which is a most of the time an autoimmune condition, is the most typical type of hypothyroid that exists. It happens when the thyroid is not necessarily working as well, and some of the symptoms include everything kind of feeling tired and everything getting slow in your body. So you feel tired and there's constipation and your skin feels dry and your hair starts falling out and you have just overall just like a sense of tiredness. And though that's a very common type of condition with associated with feeling tired. And it's also easy to diagnose. You can get a blood test, you can go to your provider, request a blood test, and it can be easily diagnosed with the blood test. So it's not as hard to diagnose as probably some of the other ones.
Yeah. But I think the common problem that I have seen this just in my line of work, in my practice, is it can be easily diagnosed with the proper blood test. Most
That's
of
true.
the time, most doctors will just run the TSH and the T4, but they don't run the T3, which is really the active one. It's the gas pedal. They don't run that test.
Mhm.
So you can have the TSH within normal limits. The T4 could be within range. Maybe it might be in lower range, but if you run the T3 and you see that that's low, you're like, oh. And of course, antibodies plays a big role. So we've done some podcasts on that, but yes, that would be one, would be hypothyroid. So and some of the common strategies with all of these is it's going to go back to I always go back to diet. That's like the low hanging fruit. You've got to make sure. Well, one, let's start with hydration. Two, making sure you're just eating real good food. So like a Paleolithic template, a keto template. I prefer a dairy-free keto template. But when you're tired, sometimes you're going to do better with higher carbs, as long as your sugar intake is low, your natural sugar intake is low, to maybe like a couple servings of fruits, like the low glycemic fruits like berries.
Right, right. Very important to know. Very important because nutrition, as if you've been listening to our podcast week after week after week, and just like we mentioned, the mindset all the time, nutrition is equally as important, and that's why it keeps being mentioned week after week after week. So very important to mention. Now, some other cause of feeling tired would be sleep apnea. Sleep apnea happens when you're sleeping. So many times you have no idea it's going on. Unless someone who sleeps near you tells you, oh my God, you snore so bad, you gotta get it checked out, right? Or you're feeling so exhausted the following morning, you go to sleep, you're sleeping okay, but then you wake up the next morning and you're feeling so tired. Many times sleep apnea is associated with obesity or overweight. So if you do have a few pounds over and you are not sleeping well, or you feel like you're not getting rested in the morning, or you are getting told that you snore very loud, or you snore a lot, or you stop breathing in between your sleeping, during the night, then maybe something like sleep apnea would be something that you want to get checked out.
Yeah.
And it's easy to diagnose, once again, quote unquote easy. You do have to go and get an order, an order for a sleep study. And then the sleep study would be able to diagnose if, in fact, something like sleep apnea would be at place.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of it's kind of divided with patients that I've talked to that had suffered with sleep apnea. Some have been overweight and they released some of the weight, and they do sleep better, but then you have some that don't really make a lot of the lifestyle changes, and they opt for the CPAP, for something to take it
That is,
right.
yes.
And that can be uncomfortable too. And I don't know how comfortable that would be for the person sleeping next to you either. So, going back to most of the time, the root cause is the person carrying that extra weight. And we talked also about sleep strategies. How do you optimize sleep? Because sleep is such a huge issue. The biggest thing is shutting down all the electronics before you go to bed. Have a evening routine. Keep the room dark, keep it cold. Don't have any TV. As we mentioned before, it's for sleep and sex. That's what the room is for. The SNS. It's not for you to do work or study or work with anything else. But it's basically, it should be your sanctuary. So even that can help on top of that. But definitely, if you are having, like, someone tells you, it's like, I had to elbow you, like, wake up, like you stop breathing. You definitely want to get that checked out.
Definitely. Now, some other cause of fatigue, and it's actually very common, Dr. Linda, I find in my practice, I don't know about you, probably a lot, as you see a lot of women primarily, is fibromyalgia. And fibromyalgia is a very common condition. It affects a lot of women. I find that a lot of Hispanics, I don't know what race you see more fibromyalgia on. A lot of Hispanic females have fibromyalgia. Not, of course, a lot of other races too, but I find more in Hispanics. And a lot of times the patients feel so tired, so fatigued. They're not sleeping well, which is affecting kind of how they think. You feel sluggish in your thinking as well. But then you also have this pain in your body, your whole body at times, or sometimes it could be just a place in your body, but most of the time it's just a sense of overall pain in your body. Sometimes you press in certain areas, and just pressing on your body gives you pain. And then you go to get it checked out, and they run all kinds of tests and they do all kinds of studies, and everything is normal. So they tell you, you're probably crazy. I don't know what's wrong. Sounds familiar?
Yes. So I see that a lot too. Like you were saying, a lot of it's primarily women. We do see a lot of women with that. But the interesting thing about fibromyalgia with some of the other conditions is very specific, like what you mentioned about the pain. There's usually like 8 to 11 areas that 8 out of the 11 areas that they check, and they're like, oh, all of those are tender. Then yes, we're going to diagnose you with fibromyalgia, which that wasn't even a condition years ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So once again, it goes back to, let's take a look at the real basic things that the foundational things that we've talked about. Are you drinking enough water? Are you eating real food? I know what the Hispanic families, Latin families, and different cultures, they eat certain foods that maybe it's not the best food now like it was 20 years ago. Hispanics, growing up, I mean, we always had tortillas in our house, but look at the number 1 and 2. You've got GMO corn. Most of the tortillas there are what? They're corn, and they're GMO or flour, wheat flour, white flour. They think, I'm trying to lose weight. So they switch over and they're like, I'm doing wheat flour tortillas. And I'm like, no, that's just as bad. It's the hybridized wheat. So that becomes another issue. And then they eat a lot of the legumes and sometimes the beans. They're very hard to digest. So then they start having all these digestive issues as well. So then they're tired because of that. So it's really, I think the practitioner really has to dig in. And it's hard to do in that 5-10 minute slot. 7 minutes. It's like you got to get them in and out of there. That's just how they're running a business. So
I'll tell you that just from experience, the first visit many times is to order the tests, like the blood test and everything else. Let's rule out that there is nothing else going on. If there is any joint swelling or inflammation, it shouldn't be. Then you're running some other tests, rheumatoid factors, set rates and CRPs and some other stuff, inflammatory markers. But if there's nothing really like that going on, you do, the blood test. Let's see, let's run a blood test. Let's see what's going on, and then I'll see you in a couple of weeks, right? We don't have the time, like you said, to kind of sit and do and do a lot of the things that we should be doing.
Mm-hmm. And also with fibromyalgia, I also find that patients do really well, like with like turmeric. They do well with fatty fish. Like the omega-3s. A lot of times you see the correlation with even a low vitamin D level. So you want to make sure that you check that as well. Like a lot of doctors don't check that and make sure that their levels are like more at mid ranges, because most of the time they're like around 20. And depending on the state, the ranges could be anywhere from 20 and 100, and you're normal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're 19 or if you're at 20 or 21, you're still normal. It's like you're at that bottom. You don't want to be there. So you want to be more like 50, 70. Sometimes you want to be a little bit higher if you are dealing with people with autoimmune. So there have been some links that with fibromyalgia and even autoimmune conditions. So we can chat about that as we go through the list here.
And it's good that you mentioned vitamin D deficiencies. It's something that I saw a lot of in Illinois because of the type of weather. So anybody listening to the podcast, if you live in a type of weather that gets really cold in the winter, where it snows in the winter, and you have to be inside a lot of the time during the winter, you may suffer from vitamin D deficiencies. They're so common. Of course, you can suffer from that no matter what, right? You should have it checked out. And, the main or one of the main ways to get vitamin D is through sun exposure. So again, during the winter, a lot of the times, probably I would say 85% of the time, I would do a vitamin D test on a patient in Illinois, and they would be deficient. So it's so common too. And this brings me to one time I was working with a physician, very, very good physician. And he came to work and he was so energetic. And I'm like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? He says, I got my vitamin D checked out and I figure out why I'm so tired. And I'm like, because he had been feeling kind of run down.
Mm-hmm.
And his vitamin D level was at 7 when he had it checked out. So he started taking vitamin D supplements, 50,000 units. And within a month, he was feeling so much better and so much better and so much better. Something just as simple as a deficiency in vitamin D could be giving you enough fatigue to make you feel run down every single day.
Absolutely. And just a note here too, the darker skin, if you have a darker skin pigmentation, it's actually harder for you to absorb vitamin D. So you sometimes need more of that.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point too. That's a very important point. Then the next thing would be something like depression. Mm-hmm. And if anybody has been even feeling tired, not tired, I'm sorry, feeling sad, just simply feeling sad makes you feel kind of just like not having energy to do anything. So the simple being sad makes you feel like that. Imagine having the actual depression. So the actual feeling of depression every single day, every single minute, everything, where there is no motivation, there is no real desire perhaps to even get out of bed. And depression is a kind of like a more broad topic, and we've talked about depression also in the past because there's also different causes for depression. So getting more in depth in the causes of depression, it's I think we did a show already about that. Because there is different causes for it. But overall, if you are depressed, if you are feeling, even if you're feeling sad, you feel like your energy is just run out of your body. And then the minute we get excited, think about it, the minute you receive awesome news, on the phone, or somebody comes to visit you and you haven't seen that person in 20 years and it's an absolute surprise, you jump out of bed and you have energy and you can jump up and down and you can celebrate, and oh my god, let me get ready, let me take a shower, and let me go eat with you. And so how does that happen, right? And it's interesting for me because a lot of the times the power of the mind has to do with a lot of it, right? How we look at things, it's how things are in our reality. So changing the way that we look at things would also change our reality. Everybody has hardships, everybody has difficulties, everybody has situations that they were tested for. And how we react to those situations, or when we make of those situations, it's ultimately what's going to dictate how we can come up on the other side. So changing the perspective, it's one thing with depression, but it's not the only cause.
And it's going back once again to, so I want people to go back to some of our previous podcasts, was because we did talk about the vibrational energy scale. When you're up here, this is love, joy, excitement. And like you were saying, say you haven't seen like a relative or one of your friends from college, or you haven't seen a really good friend of yours in a while, and you're kind of having a bad day, you're just not vibing right, and then they show up, it's like, all of a sudden you have an energy, let's go do this, let's go do that. It's just like it goes up. So I also think sometimes even depression, there's also a connection with not feeling fulfilled, like not having found their passion, like what am I supposed to do here in this life? So I think kind of people get into that state too. And I think in this time and day with COVID going on, a lot of people have lost their jobs. It's just like, okay, at least before I had a place to go, something to do, I had at least whatever it was. I had a calling that I worked at a grocery store, or I worked at a bank, and at least I was there helping people. I was serving. And now it's like they're home and I'm like, I'm doing nothing. And of course, serving people, helping people, that's like the best feeling ever. If you ever feel like depressed or anything, that's one thing I tell people, go and do something nice for someone else, because right away that's just going to change your vibrational energy. And it is like a radio station, and you just change it, and even we feel it with music. So that's really a good point of what you had mentioned with that.
Very good. Now, some other causes of fatigue, something like blood sugar dysregulation. So hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, meaning high blood sugar, low blood sugar. That can also make people feel tired, not only tired, but jittery and confused and sweaty. And you can feel a number of symptoms based on what's going on, if your blood sugar is high or if your blood sugar is low. And I think, Dr. Linda, I'm going to let you touch a little bit more about that. I think you would be the right person to touch a little bit more about the blood sugar dysregulation.
Yeah. A lot of that, and you do see a lot of the same symptoms with hyper and hypoglycemia, because one of the things I always told my patients, the best thing that you can have at home, as I mentioned before, is a blood pressure cuff. Know your blood pressure. 2, know your blood sugar levels. You've got to know your blood sugar levels, because that tells you a lot, especially in the morning, your fasting glucose levels, but also right after you eat, because you check an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And if it's going up to like 180, 200, you have a problem with how your body is using sugar and the food that you're eating. So it should be within the ranges. Like if you're waking up and you're testing at, let's say 80, 85 in the morning, your fasting glucose levels, and you eat lunch and they maybe go up to like 130, but then they start dropping down, and they drop down to 100, 90, 80 within like 3 hours, you're good. So blood sugar can you can feel tired. And a lot of times, sometimes I'm tired. I'm like, well, when was the last time you ate? And they're like, oh yeah, I haven't eaten, so it's like simple things like that. And it's always going back to, okay, make sure you're drinking enough water. I really believe with blood sugar issues, to really get that dialed in, This isn't a time for you to do intermittent fasting. This is a time for you to let's get blood sugar levels stable and have 3 meals a day. No snacking, but let's try to get you with 3 solid meals a day that have at least 20 to 30 to 40 grams of protein and some carbohydrates. But first thing in the morning, you always want to have protein. Most people make the mistake, like in the morning, they have like a breakfast bar. That's loaded with carbs and sugar, and there's hardly any protein in there. Or they eat yogurt. And if you look at the yogurt, you think it's a health food. It's not. Look how many grams of sugar and carbs are in there. So, have something. I mean, sometimes I'll have steak in the morning. That sounds crazy, but you can have like steak or some eggs and bacon, eggs and some sausage in the morning, or make like a protein shake with a little bit of healthy fat. So that's pretty easy. And of course, making sure that your hemoglobin A1C is being tested. I like to test C-peptide, insulin, glucose, and just look at some of those things. But I think once you get your diet dialed in and having a glucometer at home, that really makes a big difference.
How often would you check those labs on a patient of yours?
I check them if they're on a protocol with me. I usually go about 6 weeks, but as long as they're at home checking their glucose, their numbers, I have them check it for a week.
Okay.
Have them track it. So then after that, they can put 2 and 2 together and like, oh, I ate this, so this is what causing my blood sugar level to go up. And I'm like, they start to see it, and that's the beauty about food journaling is right away you should be able to figure out, oh, I think it was that Oreo cookie I had, or oh, I think it was that sweetened iced tea I had. So I think food journaling is one of the best things that you can do.
Awesome. All right, let's touch on anemia as another cause for feeling tired or feeling fatigued. So anemia, it's actually a very common type, especially in females, because of our menses, our menstruation every single month, especially if we have a heavy period. It's very common for us to become anemic, iron deficiency, anemic. There is also, if you are donating blood, which is common. So I donate blood every 2 months. So it's very common for me to become kind of borderline after I donate blood because I'm losing blood, of course. And there are different types of anemias. There is a bunch of different types of anemia that they would have to be diagnosed, and they can be diagnosed based on simple comprehensive blood test. And determining the type of anemia, it's important because depending on the type, the treatment will vary. So it's not the same if you're iron deficient. If you have iron deficiency anemia, you would have to take an iron pill. But if you have vitamin B12 deficiency, then you would have to take vitamin B12 injection or pills or injection, depending on the reason why of the deficiency. So getting to the cause of the anemia, and then, of course, the treatment would kind of go from there.
Yeah, definitely. And then with the anemia, going back to what you mentioned, we find it more common in women because they have heavy menses. But you also have to look at, well, why are they having heavy menses? A lot of them might have fibroids and they're losing a lot of blood. So you have to make sure that you're replenishing that. But one of the other things people don't really, you don't see this, or you don't even go down that route until maybe 1 or 2 years that this issue's been going on, has been internal bleeding. That sometimes you might have an ulcer, you might have there's parasitic infections and things of that sort that will cause that problem. And the biggest mistake that I have seen in my practice is a lot of the times the doctors do not check ferritin. That's a stored iron, and you really need to check that. I think that that's a big thing that's not checked nowadays. And, simply they'll check usually, I think just like you said, they'll run a CBC panel, and maybe they'll run the iron, but they don't run the saturation, the TIBC, they don't run the ferritin. So those are some
total iron studies.
Those are, I feel, what they need to do. And if you are, it's like, make sure that you're replenishing that, I always find that animal products are high in that. You also, of course, could do like your leafy greens and making sure that what's really important with anemia too is if you are taking any type of iron supplements, you need to take vitamin C with it. That's a huge mistake that you're not getting enough vitamin C. But vitamin C is kind of like a double has a double benefit that if your adrenal glands are fatigued, if you're tired, you need vitamin C. So even if you have like 1 to 3 grams a day, 3 might be too much for people that they get loose stools. But even if you had 1 gram, most people do maybe 500 milligrams a day. You don't want to take it all at once. You want to have time released, or you want to dose it like a morning and lunch, afternoon. So, and even with any type of iron supplements, you want to take the vitamin C with it, but you want to make sure that you have sufficient hydrochloric acid to break that down, but you want to split the dosage.
Important to mention. And something else with anemia, and it's probably one of the number one ways that I have been able to detect early state rectal cancer on patients in my practice. So getting that blood work checked, it's so important. If you are having rectal bleeding, or if you're having upper gastrointestinal bleeding, by the time it comes out, you may not see anything on the tissue. If the blood is going on from an ulcer, by the time it reaches all the way down, it's digested. The blood also gets digested. So a lot of times you don't know that you're bleeding, actually, that you have internal bleeding going on. So getting that blood work checked out, and checking your hemoglobin, your red blood cell count, your iron, your total iron studies, it's important, like you mentioned, because it can lead to, okay, what's going on? You're anemic, so let's get to the bottom of it. And many times, as I said, that has been kind of the clue that has given it away. Okay, the patient needs a colonoscopy, and it turns out that something else, of course, was causing that slow internal bleeding that was leading to that anemia. And have I not checked the CBC and all the iron studies, I had not found that one. So it's very important, and there is always a reason why. There's always a reason why you're deficient if you're not normally deficient. Again, everybody has their normals. I do have a lot of patients that are probably 12.1 and 12.1 and 12.1, and no matter what, they're 12.1, right? Or 11.9, and they're always like that. But if there is a change, if there is anything that you're not feeling good, and you know that something's not right with your body, listen to your body, be connected with your body. If your body is feeling tired, there is usually a reason why it's feeling that way. There's usually something going on. So being connected with yourself, don't brush it off like, oh, I'll just sleep, and I'll just have to deal with life, or it's just how it is, or because it's not. No matter how hard you work, you should wake up and you should feel energetic and happy and full of life, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And I know for time's sake, because we're ready to wrap it all up. I mean, we can go on and on about so many other
Causes.
we can go into, there's autoimmunity, there's, you might have EBV, there's mono, we can go on about that. There's MS, and there's so many other conditions. But it's always going back to the basic that we have our foundation that we love to work with patients. Like we said, hydration, your diet, your eating template. What is your eating template? Your sleep, your community. Right here, this is the thing that challenges people the most, is this up here. Because unfortunately, I really feel bad for a lot of doctors that, patients sometimes don't understand. They come to you, they've had a problem for all these years, and Fernanda, you got to tell me what's wrong with me in 3 to 5 minutes. That's not fair. It's just like, well, what have you been doing the last,
The past 20 years.
30 years, you expect me to figure it out in that short amount of time? it's like, practitioners, we're like detectives. There's certain routes that we're going to follow, but then, because of so much that we have to deal with more now with all the environmental toxins, different medications, because even medications can cause
Oh
fatigue.
my gosh.
We don't even get on that. I mean,
Very common, very
on
common.
on. Yeah, there's just so much, not having a social community, not feeling like you're contributing. There is so much, but I think we've given people, a few things to look at, but knowing that testing is important, knowing that what you're eating is important, what you're thinking, what you're drinking, how you're sleeping, how you're moving, all those
Everything.
things are important. So I don't know if you wanted to add any more to that, but I think we covered a lot, in this short period of time what we can do, and at least a full foundation we can start with.
Ultimately, it goes back to how you feel, what you think, and how connected you are to yourself. So once again, listen to your body. If you're feeling tired, there is a reason for it. So finding out the root cause, not just taking more caffeine or increasing your dose of coffee in the morning, because that's not the solution. That's just putting a band-aid on a wound that it's infected, and it's not just putting a band-aid and covering it up. It's not going to heal the infection. So finding out the cause is usually always what's going to get you back to health.
Yeah, and not just going and taking more vitamin B12. That's not the solution. Why are you running through the vitamin B12?
All right.
Those are other things. So I think we covered a lot, and to give our audience something to start with. So I'm glad that we can share this, and
Yes.
please share this information, because we feel like it really can change some people's lives. The recordings are there. On our Facebook page, Instagram, we're there. It's not about us. It's about how can we serve you. We're giving you strategies, health tips that you can apply on a daily basis. That's what we're about, is really wanting to help you change your life. And I have free books on my website, and we're going to be bringing other guests that, for the purpose of helping you to be the best version of you.
Awesome. And we are also on podcasts. So any of your podcast platforms, iTunes, Spotify, any of the literally any of the podcast platforms. So if you're on the go and you want to re-listen to the show, or you want to catch up on any past episodes, you can also find us under Positive Blueprints on any podcast platforms. Yes. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. And we will see you guys next time.
All right. See ya. Bye.